Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the IndieZone. My name is Kathy. At this point, I would like to provide a brief overview of the Idaho 4 case, which is the State of Idaho versus Bryan C. Kohberger, for the benefit of our listeners and subscribers who are new to this case or who may have been following it off and on, to give an oversight on the key events that have occurred thus far in this proceeding. First, back on November 13th, 2022, law enforcement officials from the Moscow, Idaho Police Department were called to a residence located at 1122 King Road in Moscow, which is just steps away from the University of Idaho campus, also located in Moscow. That residence at that time was a 3-story building. It had 6 bedrooms, and it was occupied at the time by 6 students, 5 of whom rented rooms out of that building. When police entered, they found the bodies of 4 of the 6 students who were said to be in the home that day. The 4 students who were horribly and brutally unalived were Madison Mogan, age 21, Kaylee Goncalves, age 21, Xana Kernodle, age 20, and Ethan Chapin, age 20. Xana, Madison, and Kaylee rented rooms at that rental home. The young man, Ethan, was also a student at the University of Idaho, and he was a guest at the home, staying with his girlfriend that night, Xana. There were 2 other residents of the property who were at least physically unharmed, and they are known as BF, female resident and student of the University of Idaho, and DM, also a female and a student of the University of Idaho. For the next 6 weeks, the Moscow Police Department, assisted by 2 other agencies, the Idaho State Police and the FBI, investigated the crimes. Fast forward to the 29th of December 2022. 3 key events happened that day. The first was the signing under oath of the 18-page Affidavit of Probable Cause, providing the who, what, why, and whens regarding the investigation into the crimes, and the conclusion that the perpetrator was Bryan C. Kohberger, who was then 28 years old, and who was a PhD candidate attending nearby Washington State University. He was also a teaching assistant at that time. It was his first semester there at the university. And Washington State University is located just over the border to Moscow, Idaho. Mr. Kohberger at the time, and who was at all times considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, was not in the area on December 29th, 2022. He was across the country in Pennsylvania visiting his family in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, which is located in the Pocono Mountains. Also on the 29th, the lead prosecutor who has been prosecuting this case against Mr. Kohberger, named William F. Thompson, swore out a criminal complaint relying on Mr. Payne's Affidavit of Probable Cause, believing and naming Mr. Kohberger as the perpetrator of the following crimes, all felonies. Number 1, felony burglary into the residence. Number 2, first-degree murder of Madison Mogren. Number 3, first-degree murder of Kaylee Gonzalez. Number 4, first-degree murder of Xana Kernodle. And number 5, first-degree murder of Ethan Chapin. And again, these crimes occurred at 1122 King Road, steps away from the University of Idaho. The third key event of the 29th of December 2022 is that after the prosecutor presented the criminal complaint and the Affidavit of Probable Cause to Latah County Magistrate Judge Megan E. Marshall, Judge Marshall found probable cause to believe that Mr. Kohberger was the perpetrator of these crimes, issued a probable cause order, and issued a warrant for the arrest of Mr. Kohberger with no bail. Because Mr. Kohberger was not in the jurisdiction there in the state of Idaho, the law enforcement officials locally in the jurisdiction where the crimes occurred worked with law enforcement in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And the following morning, the early morning hours of December 30th, 2022, law enforcement officials entered Mr. Kohberger's family home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, secured his arrest, and brought him to the Monroe County Jail in Pennsylvania. He appeared in a local court there in Pennsylvania twice. The second time was to waive extradition rights. He did not fight extradition, and what that is the process by which a defendant who is in another state is returned to a state where the criminal charges are pending. Mr. Kohberger was flown across the country back to Idaho in early January of 2023. He was turned over to the officials in Idaho, and he appeared the following day in early January 2023, along with his lead counsel, Ann Taylor, before Judge Marshall, who has initially been presiding over the case. And over the next few months, there were various hearings, there were various motions that were filed, there were various case management conferences, there were various warrants that were issued. Then, in May of 2023, Mr. Thompson convened a grand jury, a secret grand jury, who was presented evidence that he produced, and the grand jury returned an indictment, finding cause to believe that Mr. Kohberger, in fact, committed the crimes. Not that he is guilty of the crimes, because under our legal system he is considered innocent under the eyes of the law until he is proven guilty in a court of law or pleads guilty. Once the indictment was returned, the case was transferred to District Court Judge John Judge, also in Latah County, where the case proceeded through September of 2024. At that time, a motion for change of venue was granted, and the venue was changed from Latah County to Ada County, also in Idaho. The same prosecutorial team is leading the prosecution of the case, led by Mr. Thompson. Mr. Kohberger was transferred from Latah County to Ada County, and the new judge who has been presiding over the case since then is Judge Stephen Hippler, Ada County Judge. Mr. Kohberger made his first appearance before Judge Hippler in September of 2024. The next month, Judge Hippler filed an amended pretrial and trial order, which now has governed all proceedings since then, and has stated that Mr. Kohberger's trial will occur in Ada County in the summer of 2025. Also associated with that order are a number of pretrial deadlines, including dates that have already passed, such as dates to argue motions to strike the death penalty, which were unsuccessful. There was an order that was entered by Judge to that effect recently. There were motions to compel discovery that Mr. Kohberger has filed, motions to suppress evidence that Mr. Kohberger has filed, and there's also an amended motion for what's called a Frank's hearing. And please listen to our prior episodes of the IndieZone here on YouTube, or the IndieZone proper, the podcast, where we have gone over each and every document on the court docket dating back to document 1, page 1 of the Affidavit of Probable Cause. That's episode 1. We are now almost up to 350 episodes. Each one, 5 minutes or less, addresses every item on the court docket, the public docket, that is, because there is a slew of items that have been filed under seal that the public has not been privy to. The podcast is available on a number of platforms. Our home platform is Spotify. You can also find it on iHeart. You can find it on Apple. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Listen Notes. It is completely free, and it is almost an ebook on the court case, would be one way to describe it. So at this point, we are now awaiting the next key event on the docket per the October 9th, 2023 pretrial order, which is the filings of the state's responses to Mr. Kohberger's various motions to suppress, to compel discovery, and also for a request for a Frank's hearing. At this point, the next hearing that is scheduled to occur before Judge Hippler will be oral argument on the motions to suppress and the motions to compel discovery. That is scheduled, again per the October 9th order, to occur January 23rd, 2025, and if need be, Judge Hippler has reserved the following date, if there is any need to go into the next date for oral argument on those pending motions. If you would like to subscribe to the IndieZone podcast and listen to our reporting of each and every court document on the case in 5 minutes or less per episode, please look to the description for this podcast episode. I would appreciate it if you could like, share, and provide any comments that you have to this presentation of the IndieZone on the Idaho 4 case here on YouTube. And as always, I want to thank you very much for joining us here today.